Management consultants suck. But seeing as you all requested a video on consultants in the comments, I'm guessing you young fuckers are all wanting that McKinsey paycheck. Whatever, losers, here you go. But before we start, I texted my friend asking what it was like working at McKinsey a couple years back. Here's what he said. Consulting, in theory, is pretty simple. A company has a problem that they can't solve, and so they call in outside experts to solve it for them. That's it. You're getting paid fat stacks to give advice. You're not building anything, you're not selling anything, you're not investing in anything. You're just telling other people what to do and charging a fee for it. Now, sometimes it's serious stuff, like how do we restructure a $10 billion merger? And other times it's complete bullshit, like how do we rebrand our dog treats to appeal to transgender dog owners with non-binary dogs? The best part about consulting though? Let's say your advice fails miserably. Not your problem. You've already been paid for your services. See ya, buddy. So let's start keeping a tally of the cool shit and the bullshit about consulting. Fat stacks? Cool shit. Don't have to build, sell, or invest in anything? Amazing. We can leave all the hard shit to other idiots. And not having to worry about failure has to be one of the biggest perks of all. Do remember though, my friend said it's pretty gay. Time to dive a little deeper into what they actually do. So first we've got to understand the different kinds of consultants that exist across the universe. Here's the 5 main categories I'll cover, although not exclusive. You've got strategy consultants, operations consultants, tech or digital consultants, human capital consultants, and M&A consultants. Strategy consultants are responsible for long-term planning, market entry, competitive positioning, corporate strategy, and pricing strategy. So let's say a global beverage company wants to enter the Southeast Asian market and they want to figure out how best to do this. They call up some strategy consultants like McKinsey, BCG, or Bain and go, hey bro, figure this out. Say less and they get to work. So, what are they going to do? They'll probably start with some market analysis with 4 main areas of focus: market size, growth rates, customer segmentation, and regulation. Market sizing is pretty straightforward. How big's the market? And we want to try to figure out how big it is currently and then how much bigger could it possibly get, which is where the growth rates come into it. So what's the historical growth of the market look like? And this is often described through a figure known as compound annual growth rate, or CAGR. I think we might want a numerical example to better explain this. Let's say the size of the beverage market in Southeast Asia is represented by these figures. We can figure out the historical growth rate by dividing the ending value by the starting value. So 2.2 divided by 1. Then we put this to the power of 1 divided by the number of years. Then we take away 1 and multiply by 100 to get the percentage. We're left with a compounded annual growth rate of 21.79%. How's this useful? Well, we can use this to predict the market size for future years. Let's take the 2024 figure of 2.2 billion. We can multiply it by 1.2179 to get a value of 2.68 billion. And you can continue to do this for future years. Now, in the example we used, we analysed the size of the beverage market across all of Southeast Asia. In reality, what we'd probably do is break it up by country. And this is what the customer segmentation part of the analysis is. Depending on the market, you can usually segment the customers in multiple different ways: income, geography, age, etc. This is where you'll develop tactics and strategy as to how you'll enter a market. Which country would be the best entry point? What age demographic are we marketing to? At what price point will we sell the drink, and what brand message does that send? And then we've got the regulatory and legal environment. And this is why people with legal backgrounds will break into consulting. We're going to need to understand the different taxes, laws, import restrictions, local business practices, etc. Okay, so now that we've gotten an understanding of the market, who are the big dogs we're going to be competing with? And now we jump into competitor analysis. So we're going to need to figure out a breakdown of the market share. Who owns what? Then we're going to compare key metrics, comparing things like pricing, product range, sales channels, brand strength, cost structure, digital presence, etc. And finally, we'll need to keep tabs on them, reviewing news and press releases, financial reports, new product launches, marketing campaigns, acquisitions, etc. We're not done yet though. We still need to figure out our market entry strategy. Let's start with analysing our entry models. We could enter this market as a joint venture or partnership, we could acquire an already established brand, we could license our product, or we could directly invest in our own infrastructure. We'll have to consider a number of factors for each: speed, control, cost, regulatory burden, yada yada yada. Now, the go-to-market strategy. Who's our target customer? Where can we find them? How's our branding and marketing going to align with that? We'll have to then prioritize cities and regions that fit our strategy. Imagine you're selling transgender dog biscuits and you want to break into the North American market. Are you going to start selling them in Texas or California first? Exactly. Where we launch actually matters. And now we dive into the financials. We build models showing revenues, costs, ROI, etc., and run sensitivity analyses to test all of our assumptions. Like, what if we're wrong about how much market share we'll capture in the first 2 years? What if it's only 2% instead of 5%? How do our financials look then? Let's build out a shit case, a good case, and a great case. And to wrap it all up, we'll put all this info into a 200-page PowerPoint deck. Voila! Now let's do more of an overview for the other kinds of consultants. Operations consultants are focused on 4 main areas: process optimization, supply chain management, cost reduction, and performance improvement. So they have to map out existing workflows to get a deep understanding of the problem they're working with, identify the inefficiencies, and then implement newer systems that are supposedly meant to solve the issues. Let's say you're a consultant for a retail company that's struggling with long warehouse processing times and wants you to optimize their logistics. You go in, get an understanding of how they're currently doing things, identify where they're doing things shit, and come up with a solution, like redesigning the warehouse layout or updating inventory tracking systems. Tech or digital consultants are obviously more focused on the tech side of things. Older companies looking to modernize and get on the web, non-tech companies looking to implement AI into their systems, companies dealing with important data looking to improve their cybersecurity. Honestly, the options are endless for tech consultants in the modern world. Then we've got human capital consultants. These guys are called in when people are the problem. Too many Karens, not enough talent, lack of leadership, poor organizational structure, basically just HR on steroids. But you can imagine 2 big companies merging, right? You've now got 2 marketing departments, 2 legal teams, 2 sets of retarded interns. How are we going to reorganize them all into one well-functioning team? Call in the human capital consultants. And finally, we've got the M&A consultants, usually called in to work in collaboration with investment banker wankers. Go check out my other video for more info on that coke-sniffing lot. Anywho, these guys are doing all the typical things involved in a merger: due diligence on the deal, valuation of companies, evaluating financials, operations, and any legal risks. So, let's now revisit our cool shit and bullshit aspects of consulting. It's pretty cool that you get to work on a bunch of different things as a consultant. But it's also kind of shit that you're working on a bunch of different things as a consultant. And this was Steve Jobs' criticism of consulting.
So how many from consulting? Oh, that's bad.
You're never really sinking your teeth into anything. You're always on the surface. You don't have to live or die by your own decisions. You're getting paid hourly, or once the merger's complete, or once the organization has been restructured. Your livelihood isn't at stake after implementing these kinds of changes. In other words, you have no skin in the game. Let's dive into the dark side of consulting. I could tell you about the 80 to 100 hour work weeks, or the constant travel from city to city, or the burnout you'll inevitably experience, or how at the end of the day your talent, intelligence, and skill could have actually been used to contribute some really useful things in the world. But everyone has their own journey, and maybe trading your 20s for a life of stress, no sleep, and PowerPoint presentations, but a nice 6-figure salary, is what you need to go through in order to realize that that's not what life's about. So instead, let's focus on the biggest scandals and fuck-ups that have been due to consultants. We're starting off strong with the opioid epidemic in America. McKinsey were called in by this company Purdue Pharma to help advise them on how to sell as much OxyContin as possible. These guys took their job super seriously. Remember all the stuff we mentioned earlier about how they break down markets and figure out best points of entry and best customers to target and all that? Well, imagine doing that for drugs. They came up with the genius idea to offer rebates to pharmacies based on the number of overdoses and addictions their customers experience. If you guys manage to get your customers hooked on this stuff, we'll give you a financial rebate. They have contributed to killing over 500,000 Americans since 1999 and agreed to pay a settlement of $650 million. Pricks. Then we've got Bain & Co., who were hired by the South African government to help restructure the South African Revenue Services, basically South Africa's IRS, but instead ended up working with the president to get rid of a bunch of key personnel, giving him and the commissioner of SARS more control. Finally, we've got one that hits close to home for me. PwC Australia breaching confidentiality on new tax laws. This guy Peter Collins, who was head of international tax at PwC, told 14 of his clients about upcoming changes to Australia's tax code before the new tax laws were even implemented. So, should you be a management consultant? The short answer, probably not. Here's a quick breakdown. You should consider consulting if you want a prestigious job that will open doors later in life, you're good at presentations, frameworks, and sounding smart even when you're not totally sure, and you want to delay having to figure out what you actually want to do for a few more years. You should not go into consulting if you care about building something real, you value work-life balance, or you don't like corporate politics. If you're joining just for the salary and prestige, that's fine. Just know what you're signing up for. Consulting isn't evil, it's just mostly performative. Sometimes it's helpful, and occasionally it's catastrophic. But for the right person in the right role with a plan to get out, it can be a solid stepping stone. For everyone else, probably better to find a real problem, build something useful, and skip the 2 AM slide decks. If you liked this video, leave a comment down below as to what kind of video you'd like to see next. I always read the comments and use them to plan out future videos. As always, thanks for watching, like, comment, and subscribe. Next video should be uploaded soon.